Remember those first ones in 1933, they're a part of the first 100 days. These next ones were things that he wanted to accomplish. Um, this is by no means all of them. You see on that periodic table there's a lot more that I'm not covering here. Some other ones that I'm grouping together. Here we go, we're on number 9 on your page there if you're following with me. Number 9, we want people to have the American dream. We want them to be able to own a home. So in 1934, we set out to stimulate the building industry by providing small loans for home construction. Here you have the idea, right? This is actually called the Federal Housing Administration. You kind of see their better housing product. So if you think about that, build, buy, refinance, modernize, government loan, monthly payments, and the idea you're going to help out banks, you're also going to help out builders, you're also going to help yourself because you're going to own a modern, livable home, and that's interesting. Now the second blank at the bottom here, there's actually a similar program that comes out of this in 1934, and it's called the Home Owners Loan Corporation. So Federal Housing Administration should be the first one. The second one there that is a related program is the Home Owners Loan Corporation. And so there we have that, right? We have the idea, as you can see here, the structure of the nation's agricultural, the credit structure, and if you notice there, we have all of these things going forth. All right, number 10. Number 10 was called the Indian New Deal. It's simply called the Indian Reorganization Act. It reversed the forced assimilation of the Dawes Act. Remember, if we went back there, think of Tom Trolino, that boy, that picture I showed you where they're forcing him to give us customs and do this. We established local self-government, and we allowed them to preserve their traditions and crafts. And so it's kind of set up things that are a little bit different, but it basically is the reverse, and so hence Indian New Deal. It gave them a lot of rights that they previously possibly didn't have. All right. Now, later on in the 1960s, we're going to talk about something that came out of this called the American Indian Movement. And that was pretty interesting in itself. In the 70s, they occupied some things. I'm not going to go too much. I'm going to save that one for you. All right. Now, the next thing we have is a federal watchdog to protect public and private investors from stock market fraud, deception, and insider manipulation on Wall Street. It still exists today, and it is called the SEC. It stands for Security and Exchange Commission. The way I can make you possibly remember that is S for stock market. Exchange is what you do in the stock market. This is not Southeastern Conference football, okay? But they're trying to prevent from the stock market. Now, at this one right here, in 1935, we start the second New Deal. So 1 to 11 is the first New Deal, and I have that on there. Starting with 12 will be the second New Deal. I'm going to keep going, okay? I'm going to try to get through. The first thing we have is in 1935. Okay. 1935, we have the National Labor Relations Act. It is also known as the Wagner Act, and it created a board of the same name, namely National Labor Relations Board, okay, to protect the rights of organized labor to organize and collectively bargain. There are two worker things here under the New Deal. Just remember, National Labor Relations has to do with the union. You have the right to organize a union, collectively bargain, because if you remember back in that olden time there, we have in between the wars, unions were actually seen as communist, and so FDR is trying to do away with that and allow them to organize, okay? Now, there's the symbol for the National Labor Relations Board. It's still around today. Nonetheless, there you go. Now, the next thing we have, you have it there at the top, it is called the National Youth Administration. Okay? And now, National Youth Administration was created under the Emergency Relief Act, and it provided millions of jobs for young people. So it's National Youth Administration Emergency Relief Act. Okay? Good. Now the next one we have here, you can see all these things, radio, running water, lights, and you can see at the bottom there, rural. That's a rough one there. You have to stop and I always feel kind of silly saying it, but nonetheless, a Rural Electrification Administration, and that would be number 14. It provides low-cost loans to farm cooperatives to bring electricity into their communities. So rural electrification, if you know the rural is the country, you should be fairly good with that one. Now, another really big one that's still in existence today, and it's kind of controversial, is Social Security, okay? I'm on 15 here. The Social Security Act, 1935, established an administration, Social Security Administration, to provide a national pension for retired persons, unemployment insurance, public assistance program for dependent mothers, their children, and physically disabled. It is financed by a tax program in 1936, and it continues to be our nation's most expensive and important domestic program. And there's a lot of controversy over what's supposed to do here. They love using this thing there, just so don't get tripped up about it, all right? Now, they have a similar one with a female widow of a qualified worker receive monthly benefits at age 65. And that's a big key, all right? Moving on. Number 16. All right? Number 16 is probably one of the most important ones, yet at the same time it's also very controversial. The WPA stands for Works Progress Administration. So the idea was to get people out and get them working and get them progressing. This was also established under the Emergency Relief Act, and this actually lasted until 1943. It employed millions of people. They built projects for public good. However, they had an arts program of the agency, and they provided money to unemployed entertainers, writers, and that was very controversial. But if you can get people to forget about their state in life and have a good time, generally people are going to be a little bit happier. All right, number 17 then. Moving right along, correct? We have Years of Dust Resettlement Administration rescues victims, restores land for proper use. Resettlement Administration is in the name, but it is technically called the Farm Security Administration. It was formerly called Resettlement Administration. And so that happened in 1935 and 37. We call it Farm Security Administration. It set up temporary housing for the Okies and the Arkies from the Dust Bowl who migrated to California looking for work. And so resettlement helps you remember that, but if you remember farm security, these are the people who are affected by the Dust Bowl, okay? Now, last thing, number 18, right? Pretty good. It is this. It is called the Fair Labor Standards Act. You see it up here, right? This is the last major piece of New Deal administration. It's a labor law that set up probably the most important thing, minimum wage and maximum hour laws. It also severely curbed the use of child labor. This is to be in every employment place in the country. And if it's not, and someone comes in there to check, your boss can get fined. So make sure they see it. Don't get this confused with National Labor Relations. National Labor Relations. Labor Relations is a union. Labor standards. A standard is the things that should be followed. Minimum wage, maximum wage, child labor, etc. As I said, in 1938, the New Deal is basically done. Why is the New Deal basically done? We're having to turn our attention to things in the other part of the world, namely in Europe. Mussolini in Italy and also Hitler are beginning to kind of beat the drums of war. We're a year out from World War II at this point, and also Japan is kind of doing stuff in the Pacific and getting close to our interests over there. So the New Deal is essentially done. Did not solve the Depression, as a lot of people will tell you. That is completely false. World War II did. But nonetheless, people love FDR because he got out and did something, and he did a lot of things under this New Deal. And so mainly that's why people respect him and love him so much, is because, hey, he tried.